Welcome everyone to the second session of our webinar series. I am Madhumita Jana going to host today's session. Hope I am audible and visible well to everyone. If you have any problem regarding the connectivity, you can text in the chat box or our coordinator Mr. Shandip Rana will get to you. Before going to the session, I want to give you a quick reminder that please turn off your video and keep yourself mute so that the seminar can be conducted seamlessly. There is a question answer session after the presentation. You can ask the question by raising your hand or you can text the question in the chat box. So no more time waste. I would like to request Mr. Abhishek Goswami to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Parthaprati Mandal, uh, with us. So
Thank you,
please come
Madhumita.
on the floor.
Yeah. Indeed, I'm really glad that Partho is here. Just to introduce him, he is currently a PhD scholar and university associate at the Western Australian School of Mines at Curtin University. He also has a background of working as an imaging geophysicist in PGS, firstly in India and then in Australia. He holds a bachelor's, a first class degree in physics from Presidency College before he came to Dhanbad, I believe in 2007 to graduate in 2010. So I haven't seen Partho in Dhanbad, but I've had contact with him. I'm certainly aware of the fact that he is a processing subject matter expert when it comes to the area of pre-stack depth migration and reverse time migration. Beside his work, he was also a founding member and the president of the EAGE SEG student chapter at Curtin, and currently he serves as the secretary of ASEG Western Australia branch. Now, as a person, I've heard he loves to teach, but the fact that he's a very approachable and helpful person, I don't have to go further than myself to bear a testament to that. I only reached out to him less than 2 weeks ago with a request to come on board. He has done so spectacularly. So you're going to have Partho not just today, but later again on Saturday, when he'll walk us through some very interesting aspects of geomechanics. But for today, it is imaging to follow up on acquisition yesterday. So without ado, Partho, over to you.
So thank you, Abhishek sir, for contacting me and give a nice introduction. I just want to clarify that one point. I was passed out 2011. I think Abhishek sir mentioned 2010. That's okay. So brief background is already given. I try to finish this talk within an hour, but it's a very vast topic. So just touched upon few of the things and what is normally happening presently in the industry and processing wise where we are presently. But my main focus should be on the modern seismic imaging techniques and then just a brief overview how the workflow normally runs through. And then later on we'll take some question answer. So my presentation will be divided in these following parts: brief introduction, like what you are expecting from this today's talk, then give you a scenario of processing overview, which is normally applied in a marine perspective mostly, and then I will go through why the depth imaging or velocity model building is required compared to the previous techniques available, which is like time imaging. Then a few of the velocity estimation methods presently routinely applied, and then going more towards more complex topics, which is anisotropic model building, as well as a couple of slides with full waveform inversion before concluding. So I expect hopefully after this talk you have some idea how the processing workflow runs and what are the velocity model building techniques and some of the imaging concept. So most purpose is to all of the students presently in the ISM to give you an overview how seismic processing run, and what are the steps we normally apply during the processing and imaging workflow. So after this presentation, you have some ideas about processing sequence, velocity model building techniques, depth imaging, and the direction presently we are moving. So let's go through some of the processing techniques of the sequence. So here broadly I put together basically the starting scenario and the end scenario where what our expectation is. So let me just bring the laser pointer. So we have our seismic data. So I hopefully Abhishek yesterday explained you what the acquisition setup is, some brief description about. So which is basically raw shot gather, and then you have your auxiliary data. Auxiliary means some other data sets which is normally necessary to process seismic data, which is navigation files, some grid information, etc., etc. And basically the end goal through this processing is 2 ways. So final aim is to get some structural image which you can use for the structural interpretation, further attribute analysis, and another way is to basically more advanced, which you can say that seismic amplitude you can use as a lithology indicator, either as a fluid or the rock typing, those area, which is mostly the AVA scenario. So from here to we need to go to this here through several steps. So next is basically you are connecting this seismic data with your auxiliary data, and basically the step you want to apply to remove some of the effects which is happen because of the acquisition. So it could be you can say in marine setup tidal correction, something you can I'll come back later, some correction due to the phase of the wavelets, which is called, we remove some of the bubbling effect, as well as movement of the when the streamer normally acquired, there is a movement of the receiver also, so we can remove some kind of acquisition effects. So the initial stage is to remove acquisition effect before we apply any other processing techniques, which is normally get rid of the unwanted signal. So this is the step where we call it denoise, maybe we call demultiple. So I grouped it together here. Next slides I'll show you and split those together and make it a branch so that you can understand further it better. Once we are able to remove that, the another important step which we called is the regularization, which is basically you create another new kind of data sets from the existing data for preparation of your imaging step, which is migration, as well as some of the velocity model building techniques we do. So once we finish this velocity model or get some velocity with which sound wave propagate, we'll come back to correcting the propagation effects. That's what we call migration. So later on few of the slides I'll touch upon this topic as well. Once we get this stage reach here, some you can say fancy processing techniques to basically enhance some of the signal quality, which could help to create a better kind of structural image. And then the other group will go through basically reservoir oriented processing, which is called like AVO, and that will indicate lithology indicators. And here is one of the things is missing is which is the velocity model is shown here. But if we want more advanced, like very detailed resolution wise model, which is presently available because of the huge compute and the other development in the geophysics, which we call full wave inversion. Basically, we are not rejecting any other data sets, using as much data we record as a raw seismic gather, and use that to derive another velocity model, which we call the workflow is full wave inversion. And this will give us high resolution velocity model. So this is the whole processing sequence normally run through. Company wise or industry standard wise, different people have different choice, but in a broader terms, that's the workflow normally it runs. So now if I just divided the whole chunk which I saw previously as a broader terminology as a normal processing sequence in marine data, I'll divide in this way. So you can see several color coded, I have marked it here. So basically one stage I could call removal of the acquisition effect as well as plus some of the noise we thought which could be direct arrival or refraction, which is come under a denoise and acquisition effect removal. The second part I will consider is most important is the demultiple, because we are trying to get information only the wave which has propagated through the earth and reflected back to surface without any other repetition of the reflection, which we call demultiple. Then basically regularization as another box, and then velocity model building migration I can consider is another box, and finally post migration processing, which will go through these steps. So I'm not reading through it, but this is the normal steps apply, and this is an example from the marine data perspective. Moving on to show you some data set itself and how like normally short gather looks like. So this is a real example of a short gather which we generate frequency octaves, that means divided in a frequency chunks over the whole bandwidth which we acquired. And this is an example of the present broadband data. Broadband means it has a larger bandwidth from, you can see from 1 to 2 hertz up to, I have not shown here, it's 250 hertz. So every frequency band you can see as we go like mid frequency ranges, mostly from the shallow to deep, it's quite clear. So this is a deep idea how the short gather looks like in a, again in a marine setup. So I was discussing previously about some of the acquisition effect or the system generated noise which we could be required to remove it. So one of the important aspect during the structural interpretation when we reach, which we called basically remove the effect of make sure that the data set we receive as a zero phase wavelet, which will help us to interpret data properly so that wavelet continuity or the confusion is removed. And in the marine setup, because of the air gun propagate through it and it can generate bubble energy, so the data itself masked by the bubble. So once, if I show you some example, you can see how the some of the stack information has been masked by this bubble information. So this is one of the very crucial step at the early stage we do. Either if we go for a proper processing workflow or if it is a velocity model building workflow, does not matter. We always need to perform this, make sure that wavelet is zero phase and attenuate the bubble energy. So to give as an example, this is again some of the frequency octave panel in a short gather, but we basically creating a common channel. So it looks like a stack section. So from left to right, you can see the frequency is changing. And here we applied basically the gain, similar gain, because normally the waveform attenuates, we cannot see the lower part. So that's why similar gain is applied from the left to right so that you can see it. And this red line represents the water bottom. So our purpose is to quality control when we do this designature process, basically remove make the wavelet to zero phase and removing the bubble effect. We want to check the continuity of the timing here, like everything should align with this white point from the each of the frequency band. So this is example from the pre-designature and this is after. So you probably see from this before example, the data set have like a shadow type look, which is the presence of bubble. And once we apply that, you can see how clean it is, and most of the bubble is removed. If you also see the lower end of the frequency, where the phase alignment was poor before we do not have that correction of the designature, and once we apply that, it's mostly improved. So these are one of the crucial steps where we make sure the wavelet information is become zero phase, as well as remove the bubble energy. So the next stage is one of the crucial is demultiple. It's a vast and broad field. I'm not going to touch in the details of demultiple, but what are the possible methods nowadays people apply? Example is deconvolution. You can say few different scenario people can still apply, but most improvement is the surface related multiple attenuation, which we call SRME. You people already have read about it. Now the another kind of algorithm is also available, which is OEVcation based prediction. We call it OM. And then radon demultiple is in another domain, like parabolic tau P domain transformation, which is also another kind of demultiple techniques. And very simple techniques like which we apply at the end of the processing stage, like when we are stacking or applying any kind of mute, that inert stress mute to remove the multiples. Because if our multiple have like a quite big move out, it is always easy to remove the move out information. But suppose we are in the near offset region, this is a short gather, and if multiple is basically flatness and the primary events flatness is similar, it's always difficult to get rid of those kind of information. Those time we normally apply some kind of inert stress mute, as well as to remove the far offset we apply radon demultiple. And these surface related multiple elimination mostly applied like which is generated from your like seabed. Some of the information which is several times reflected and come back recorded in the later arrival times, which we apply through SRME. But I'm not going through the details. This slide I just put what are the multiple attenuation techniques available and regularly applied. Moving on to the basically the main part where I have mostly worked in the last 5 years in PGS is the seismic imaging, which is velocity model building and depth imaging. So still there should have some confusion, like why we call imaging or seismic migration. It should be almost similar. There should not be any confusion, like what we call seismic migration, it's exactly the imaging. So to explain that stuff in a better, very simple way, you can see the left hand side, we have a subsurface model. You can see, and then some acquisition information is printed on it. So the first stage, which we basically the getting the record of our data or short gather, which we consider as a modeling prospect. So basically we record all the short gathers, say like send some source, and it's propagate through the earth and record maybe different travel time, 8 seconds, depending upon the scenario, and we are basically recording everything on the surface. So all our recording instruments are in surface, basically at 0 time. But when migration, what we mean, we want to see every information, whatever happened or how the subsurface looked like at different depth at exactly 0 time. Like if I want to say that we record everything at time at 0 depth, but in the opposite way, we want to see everything what happened in the subsurface or how the subsurface looks like at exactly t equal to 0 time, which is called migration. So this part we call, first part we call modeling or forward modeling, like generating synthetic seismogram is a forward modeling approach. Whereas if we have a short gather and we process this data and then properly move it back, migrate it back in its original position and generate an image, then we call this opposite workflow as a migration. So this is the brief workflow, and probably this example give you a better idea. So you can see this image of some human body. He's top in the water and his body is in the moved from the actual position. So by migration, our purpose is to basically bring that body back to just below the head. You can think migration in that same aspect. I think this is also maybe seen as another scenario because Earth's subsurface, each of the layer have a different velocity contrast and medium. So in this example, it is a simple water and air example. But normally when we receive our data set or record the data set, we see in its apparent position. But our purpose is to basically bring it back to its actual position. So from this example, we can say we want to put this body back to below his head. That's the migration perspective it is. So for that, we require velocity model. So I'll come to the next couple of slides to highlight that point. But over the years, like I can say that marine seismic imaging has been improved a lot. It's not only just the acquisition perspective, but as well as the processing or the imaging algorithm itself. So these are the example how system or the imaging algorithm can be improved. So if you have a poor algorithm or the mathematical equation you are using to image your subsurface, then you can see from this scenario as your approximation or the equation to image the subsurface is improved, quality will be also improved. Similar for bandwidth, like if you have a lower bandwidth data compared to the higher bandwidth data, you can see the contrast visible from here. So over the years, it has both have improved. So we have reverse time migration, we have fuller inversion, presently least squares time migration. So as computing getting better and faster, algorithm is also getting improved. So now once I speak about the migration aspect, I can tell a little bit about difference between time migration or time imaging versus depth imaging. So in the time imaging, one of the biggest approximation is that we normally use a very uniform smooth velocity model, and where it does not consider any lateral velocity contrast. So suppose in the migration we called as a migration aperture, you already heard about it. If we take a 5 kilometer aperture, so we use a uniform single velocity function within that 5 kilometer interval to migrate one of the waveform. So that's why, but the subsurface normally it's quite variable. If it is not a flat layer geology or a geology is not very smooth, there is a structural variation. Several example I have, I'm going to show you in next couple of slides. So that's why the time imaging slowly, almost every processing stage nowadays have like a depth imaging workflow, because sometimes the structure we see in the time, which could be a false structure, and once we make it a corrector, creating a good velocity model and then migrate it in the depth domain, then we can basically able to achieve both its correct positioning as well as the imaging. Because ultimate aim is when we drill any borehole for the finding of the oil or gas, the driller always do it on the depth domain. So we need that information in depth quite better. That's why presently it's a very robust approach to apply in any processing workflow. Is the best example to explain you why that's important. So in the left hand side, I am showing one of the imaging algorithm, which is Kirchhoff. You already seen. PSTM means pre-stack time migration, and the same algorithm Kirchhoff, but it is in depth, pre-stack depth migration. So if you see the left hand arrow here, so one of the structure it is showing has some structural high features. Why it was happening? So probably you can see in the very shallow section there is some salt body structure is there. So as I mentioned, it does not consider lateral velocity contrast. So suppose we have migrated with the Kirchhoff time migration, so it does not consider any velocity contrast along this lateral variation. That's why the structure, because of the erroneous velocity in the shallow section, is getting pulled it up here. But once you see the right hand side, which is Kirchhoff depth migration, because we have now more control both in the lateral and the vertical orientation, and you can see that image is completely flat, which indicates that if someone's just only go with that, he probably indicate there is a structural high or possibility of some hydrocarbon indicator, but it is a very flat geology. There is no structural high is present because we have resolved through Kirchhoff depth migration. But for that we require a velocity model. I'm just coming to that next few slides later. So this is a few of the example where we see this kind of variation. It's quite well-known several geological structure like a faulting, thrust faulting. You can see that like hanging and footwall, there is a difference in velocity variation, as well as if you have a lateral velocity contrast, you see one of this layer from the left hand to right hand side, there is a changing velocity. Similar for salt section. If you have a salt geometry, I have not dealt much with the salt, but it has also a significant challenge imaging below the salt. Similar for faulting. If you have a several faulting in a given region, you can see that if your velocity is not properly corrected for that salt effect or the fault effect, then the imaging will be poor. So this is four of the few several scenarios, but there are several other possibilities as well. Moving on, why we need that good velocity model. So as I mentioned, our main aim is ultimate to produce a structural consistent model where the structural interpreter can reliably interpret and able to find some indicator of hydrocarbon, as well as lithological modeling. We need to make sure the image is correct in its depth, because ultimately we need to define the depth where our prospect could be, as well as spatially it should not have any variation, and also any of the offset. Offset means the actual the acquisition geometry. You already see what offset means, so we need to correct for all the offset effects as well. But if we have a wrong velocity, then we have both the misplaced, not only depth laterally as well as the offset wise. So velocity is the one of the most important aspect in this for a successful depth imaging, and this velocity is used in other purpose as well. Once processing finished, it will go to the every other workflow. People always need this velocity. So this is the example, like both of the gather is migrated with two different velocities. If you see left hand side and right hand side, probably you can see these. If I say that these are some of the gathers which is moving downwards, or the curvature is down, that means the velocity is not correct enough. That's why gather is not perfectly flat. But if you have improved the velocity, this is one of the example on the right hand side, which is showing better flatness. So that's why we need a good velocity, so that we can create a continuous flat gather for the all offset. And when you stack it together, your stacking response will also improve, which will help to get a better structural image. So far, whatever example I show, I have not tell you how we get that velocity model or from where that velocity model comes from. So we assume that we have one very initial velocity, and then we migrate the data, and then we try to see is the velocity is good enough or not. How we quality control it, like looking in the previous example I was showing. Once we see that gather along with offset, if it is not flat enough, that indicates that we whatever velocity presently we have, it is not good enough. So in the time imaging, I already mentioned it will consider as a 1D approximation, does not consider laterally. So that's why the imaging quality wise it could be okay, but the structural wise it is not, because it does not consider the variation. So that's why we need to go for a more better refined velocity, which we normally does through depth imaging workflow. So this is another slide, how we normally estimate velocity as a given example. So this is, you can say this is the same offset, as well as time example. And this is a plot in your book. May you have seen several examples like this. So depending upon where we are picking, we could call velocity in different terminology. So here I give you several names like CMP, CDP, CIP, CRP. So each of these have their own meaning. So CMP means it's a common midpoint gather. So this is normally done in the pre-migration stage, where when we go for a regularization, we could get a CMP gather, but it is not. It's only, you can say it's mostly used for processing perspective. It's not a migration velocity. But if you do in CDP, which is like common depth point, that means our reflection points or the depth point is fixed, and where the velocity we obtained, we can use that velocity for the migration purpose. And CRP is another terminology, same way we can see in depth migration perspective, which is a common reflection points. When we are going for a correcting a velocity as through different approach or different algorithm, we consider this as a CRP gather. But CRP and CDP wise, it's similar. One we can normally common depth point or reflection points. So here is the example which is showing velocity data, velocity this way increasing, and the time is increasing this way. And if I peak my velocity here, this is a semblance plot where normally time before migration stage we normally peak it. But nowadays, because of automation and stuff, we have a lot of facility available where it can peak automatically, and then you need to do some quality control so that this gather looks reasonably flat. So I'll just show you, this is a, if I peak velocity slower than this original position, you can see gather is going upwards. If I peak velocity higher than its semblance position, you can see it is going downwards. Now if I peak exactly on the center, you can see gather becomes more reasonable flat. So initial or the pre-migration stage, normally through this semblance we peak the velocity to create our initial velocity model, because initially we need to start from somewhere. So that's the only way we can get that velocity before going through the velocity model building or depth imaging algorithm itself. So this is another important stuff which I was mentioning previously, CMP versus CDP definition, as a more explanation as a cartoon diagram. So one of the stage we does is a regularization, where basically once we have remove all kind of noise, remove the multiples, data is mostly comprised of your primary event, then we create a new kind of stresses from the acquired data, and this will represent a common midpoint, regular midpoint setup and offset, and it may have regular azimuth as well. But you can see from the surface perspective you have common midpoint, but from the subsurface perspective it is not common, it has a different reflection points. So the regularization is a surface approach algorithm to make or regularize your traces within a given, you can say, grid size or a particular box location you design. But when you go for imaging, which is here like common CDP or CRP, you can see that imaging is the process of mapping basically your seismic amplitude from surface back to the subsurface from where it is reflected. Then this like several points ambiguity will go away and it will remain as a common depth point. So that's the biggest difference between CDP and CMP. So in the pre-migration we have CMP gather. Once we migrate, it becomes CDP gather or CRP gather. Moving on to showing some example of the velocity peaking. It's a quite old image I have taken, but nowadays it's mostly automated. People normally do as a quality control later on. Normally it can run through. So this is a semblance plot. So you may have already heard or read your processing what the semblance is. So they'll create a fairway boundary between like where the semblance, minimum range of semblance, maximum semblance it can get, and then basically you can peak your velocity looking the semblance itself. At the same time, people normally check how the stacking improved, because velocity should, if you peak the correct velocity, it should improve your stacking response as well. And this is velocity we called either stacking velocity or the root mean square velocity or RMS velocity, what we say. And once we get RMS velocity, we can convert it back to interval velocity, which is our need for either velocity model building or depth imaging. We require a interval velocity because we try to find within layer how the velocity varies from one layer to the other. Moving on, this is one of the example of the interval velocity. So like when we initially peak the velocity, because it could have a lot of, you can say that several bullseye feature, which is not like initial stage. If we peak a velocity, we should expect velocity should vary smooth way, like from top layer to bottom layer. It should have a smooth boundary, not this zigzag pattern. If you have some particular geological feature which we already know or have idea about it, then we can see some kind of localized variation in velocity, but in a general term we expect a very smooth velocity. That's why this velocity, if we want to use for our velocity model building, it's not acceptable, because it has lots of discretization as well as lot of variation. The geology may not be varying that much. The geology may be very smooth compared to this stage. So that's why initial stage we apply several large smoother in 3D domain, different kind of smoothing function you can apply and create a reasonable velocity which we can start with for our velocity model building project or the depth imaging project. So this is the smooth velocity. So now we know that why we need that velocity, from where it comes back, and how this depth imaging will actually help to get a better velocity model, because we use this initial smooth velocity model, and then we want to compute its like what's the relation between this velocity model and the travel times which we get from the seismic data itself. So we try to find that relation by ray tracing. It's also a one kind of like you can say that you know the velocity model, and then you divide your whole subsurface as a several grid and try to propagate that, like how much time it should take through each of the box. So if your travel time is wrong, then velocity needs to be updated. So somewhere along the way. So our purpose is through this velocity model building package or the velocity model building different algorithm, how in 3D sense this travel time error coming from, and from which cell it was coming from. It could be come from any of the layer in the subsurface. So that means we have a very strong spatial control when we try to get our velocity, because we are doing it in a 3D sense, both vertically as well as spatially. Whereas in the time migration, we are doing as a basically point-based approach or 1D approximation, you can say, similar like a single point velocity assumption. So to give you a better overview, similar to the processing workflow, this velocity model building also have a similar workflow, because it's mostly an iterative process. So you need to run several times, similar workflow. So that's why initially we require some interpretation like a geological boundary. What are the main geology changing from the shallow to deep section in the stack? Information, so you know that sonic logs acquire the actual travel time as well. So you can use that well information. The initial velocity model I previously explained from where we are getting it, VRMS, either for automatic picking or the by manual picking, we get that VRMS. And then we have our initial velocity model. I show you in that smooth example, which suppose it as an initial model. Then going through the first stage is basically you prepare your data regularization up to remove all the noise, and then you get your initial velocity, then you migrate it. So this migration we call p-stack depth migration. You can use different algorithm. I am not going to the algorithm itself, but how the workflow run I am explaining here. Once we get that, first stage is need to check how this gather looks like. Are those gathers are pretty flat, or there is move out visible? Move out means if you choose a particular depth, and if the one gather is there, for that depth from all the offset, your gathers looks like completely. So maybe these should be example as you see previously. So if I see this depth point, I should see my all the wiggle plot should come from this. It should not have any move out left. If we have any move out either upward or downward direction, that means the velocity which we use is not correct. So the initial velocity quality control is done through this move out analysis, but all in the depth domain, no longer in time domain. Once we get that move out analysis, then we basically use that move out information. How much, like if we know gather is flat here, then how much move out is visible, that we can estimate through the 3D tomographic velocity update, which I was explaining how we do the ray tracing and try to find from which cell that amount of correction is required. We can find. So, but it has several assumptions is also there. That's why still the present workflow I'm mentioning, it have some limitation also. So once you finish that velocity update, that means you get a new velocity. Once you get a new velocity, what will happen? All of your information will change. Like you migrate again, and you get a new stack or the new migrated section itself. And if you see there is a difference between the initial stack versus this updated stack, then you probably see it has changed all the horizon information as well, also the information, because you may have moved the sum of the structure either upwards or downwards depending upon the velocity correction. And from there itself we get our updated velocity model. If this quality and the structure matching with the geology, and normally this process geologist involved who is looking on this project, and they normally give in a geophysics perspective you quality control and stuff, but they also need to agree whatever velocity you are producing, it is meaningful. And then you basically go back to the same workflow again, and this process normally repeated, because you cannot do this process in a one go. Then the algorithm or the things you are applying, probably you can, some part you can improve, maybe the other part of your 3D velocity model will go wrong. So you need to do it in a very slow fashion so that you can reach the actual reduce this move out analysis error. It has also to do with the inversion algorithm itself, because you don't want to fall your iteration in a local minima. You need to reach slowly to the global minima. And once this whole processing flow complete, you get a very nice velocity. Maybe you run this workflow 6-7 times and get a very good updated velocity model. Then you use that to generate your final velocity as well as the final migration. So this complete basically the velocity model building workflow. I think this exercise or this slide will give you a few better example. So here you have two mostly important layer, H1 and H2. You have 3 velocity, and I'm going to show you some gather here at 2 of these location. So suppose both of the gather here come flat completely. After migration, then I can surely say the velocity in my first layer, which is above this H1, is correct, because the ray will go through this and then reflected from here, come back. If the velocity in the shallower layer correct, that means These are flat. So that means V1 is correct. We don't need any correction. Now I'll go to the second layer, which is this H2, and you see both of these gather is coming over corrected. That means the velocity here is not correct. So this slow velocity, that's why it's going upward direction. So our problem is through this to find the magnitude, like how much value we need to correct in terms of velocity, as well as the distribution of error, like is it coming from this layer or this layer. These two tasks it simultaneously try to resolve. It's not an easy task, but with several approach you can able to achieve some reasonable result. So the techniques presently available for this tomographic or iterative approach is I can broadly divide them in three parts: refraction travel time tomography, which is mostly used for a, you can say, shallow velocity model building. It could be like a lot of people run refraction, refraction data recording for a like civil engineering project. People do this kind of things, but sometimes if you have a good if you have some features which is very shallow features which is masking your velocity, people sometimes use refraction techniques as well. The workflow I was presently explaining you, basically the reflection travel time tomography, which can build a reliable velocity model with fair amount of resolution. And then the most important, I think mostly nowadays people are trying to achieve is the waveform topography, which we will call full waveform inversion. So it's in terminology wise, it should use all the information like travel times, amplitude, and phase to its fullest potential, so that we can find out that whatever the velocity error is coming using information of the full waveform. That means we do not remove, we will not going to remove any information. If we have refraction, reflection, diffraction, everything we will keep it. Use those information to get a better velocity model. But for reflection, from the term itself, you understand it's only the reflection, primary reflection we will going to use. So when you have more data set itself, it will give better velocity. Moving on, just little bit touched upon the anisotropic VMB. I know it's too many things I was telling in a very short span of time because it's a big area to cover, but at least to give you idea how normally it's happened. So anisotropic VMB or migration workflow. So for the anisotropy by means like it's direction dependent. So velocity should not be uniform in one direction. Previously, whatever velocity we are showing as a move out velocity or the VNMO velocity, but here we want to see specific direction. It could be vertical velocity and how it's varying in the horizontal orientation as well. So for the similar anisotropy workflow, we also start same way. But all the velocity model building workflow run in a top-down fashion. Top-down means you fixed your velocity in the shallow part first before moving to the deeper part. So here, suppose we have an initial velocity model. This is my layer 1. So first I will establish a correct velocity here. Then I will introduce two of the anisotropy parameters, which is Thomson's delta and epsilon. So first I will correct for delta. I will come what that delta means and epsilon. Next two slides. And then basically I will complete by layer 1 vertical velocity, delta, epsilon, as well as migrated in the depth domain. And you finish the layer 1 and then you will move to the layer 2. So that's why it's a bit time consuming, because you cannot do several. If it is geologically is few of the layers similar, you can combine one or two layer, but best approach should be layer based approach. So which is the seismic the interpretation horizon. That's why we need some of those horizon at the initial stage to decide from where we start the model building. So this is repeating same way as we move from one layer to the other. So here is the delta estimation. So delta is a parameter which is normally estimated from the oil information. So you need the oil tops or the formation markers, we call it. So it's based upon a approximation for geological tops. So equation is given here. Basically, you try to use seismic horizon depth wherever the seismic horizon is coming, and you want to know the at the same if you have a oil log or the oil information at the same depth where that formation is or the horizon is. If there is a difference, we try to apply that correction through this equation. So to give you example what that delta means, it will explain you better, I think, this slide. So this is an isotropic 3D Kirchhoff migration where left hand side is showing you CDP gather. You can see gather looks pretty reasonably flat, and this is a oil logs where basically these are basically your tops of the oils. So like you can say, I can say formation 1, formation 2, formation 3, same way. So we have the seismic interpretation also, which is horizon 1, horizon 2, horizon 3. So if you see the stack here, probably the horizon 2, my seismic event is here, but from the oil information, it is showing here. So what do we need to do? Our seismic should tie with that yellow marker, which is visible in the oil. So that's the correction we apply through the delta, which I saw previous slide. So if I compare this before isotropic and then after, before and after. So you can see once you apply that correction, if you see the left hand side gather, it does not move much. So it's only just shifted in depth. The other parameter which is controlling the move out information, which is called epsilon. So this is again another example. If you have several oils available in a big field, normally it is a development field. When you have a lot of oil information available, you can build a 3D delta model. Otherwise, if you have one oil, you use that information and extrapolate between your horizon, layer to layer. Okay, so this is the epsilon. Epsilon is basically we try to correct the effect of the move out, which is coming normally from the farthest offset. So if you see some of these image here, this again image gather. Several of the images showing here, not in bigger scale. So you can see some hockey stick type. So from several of the images showing hockey stick approach. That means they are not corrected. After we apply delta as well as properly correct for velocity, it's still showing correction, which indicates that it has a direction dependent effect. Like from the angle effect, it has need to apply some correction, which is defined through epsilon. And we normally do scanning because we don't know what the epsilon should be. So in the processing scenario, people try several scenarios as I'm showing here. So 1, 2, 3, so 5 different scenario of epsilon. You try and migrate simply, and then check which one is giving you a best result. Because we are trying to do this in a 3D sense, not like a 1D gather or 2D line. So we need to run it over the whole volume and then check several of the area, at least some of the oil location or the most prospective area. And then if we are happy with any of this model, then you confirm that this is our epsilon model for the anisotropy. So this is a whole picture of this generalized VTI 3D travel time tomography. So we have our initial model, initial delta, and the initial epsilon, and then you migrate, get your initial CRP or CIP gather, and then you check the gather flatness. We do residual move out QC. If gather is flat, then you are okay, but it's never like that. So you need to go through this process again. So when you include the anisotropy, you are adding few more terms, which is delta, epsilon, V0. Here I am showing a delta is a fixed, but presently it could be possible like you can update this model as well as you are updating your velocity at the same time. And then this workflow would run through and you get your improved gather. And probably most important thing, you should see your velocity model should follow the structure. That's why this is so important. In terms of velocity model building, we expect the velocity model which we able to achieve, it should follow the seismic structure, like it should be meaningful in geological sense. So to summarize, velocity model is crucial for quality of the depth migrated image. Not only that, several other perspectives also require velocity, like pore pressure prediction, other things, geological interpretation. Later on, they require velocity always. And if it's anisotropy, we can possibly get interval velocity, anisotropy. And nowadays there is also a possibility you can able to estimate your 3D attenuation model, which is called like VMBQ model. So you can get that as well. So as you understand, it's in a 3D sense, it's a basically complex relation between travel times and velocity. That's why, because you require a lot of compute. And why full wave inversion become a reality now, because concept was there, like maybe 40 years ago that same concept was there, but people cannot do it because of the limitation of the resource and computing, but presently they can. So with this, I think there is few more comments. I'll skip these slides, it will be too much. Finally, I just want to maybe 5 to 7 minutes, I think it's nearly 1 hour now, to touch upon full waveform inversion. So the waveform inversion is exactly similar to the tomographic approach, but the way you are updating your velocity is different, or the information you are using to correct your velocity is different. So here also you require a starting velocity model or initial velocity model. But in this case, we don't require any short gather information. We require basically the information of the geometry, like acquisition geometry. So if you have a short information geometry, if you have your starting model, and then another thing we require, which is the wavelet, means the far field signature, or the when you generate air gun or burst air bubble, how the signature of that air gun is propagated. We require that, which we call wavelet. So normally they record it, so we get that information, and we run forward modeling. I explained you previously what that modeling means. So that means you can generate some synthetic sorts. So from this part you will get your synthetics, and we already have a real sort, which is the real sort gather which we are discussing. So this is, you don't need to go in any processing stage. You just simply remove some of the acquisition effects, and then simply you can compare your synthetic sorts with the real sort. And that difference is the residual wave field difference between real sort and synthetic sort. And in terms of you use both the amplitude and phase information and then back propagated through the inversion to get your velocity model. But it's easy to say, it has a lot of details involved on this inversion, several parameters, checking your initial velocity, those terms are there. So your main aim is to minimize the difference between the synthetic sorts and real sorts. So probably you can use some like density model as well. Sometimes people try to use to get a better synthetic sorts at the initial stage. So this is the whole concept. In a workflow wise, I don't want to explain it, but like you should have your raw sorts and you remove some denoise application, very brief denoise, which is normally remove the acquisition type denoise. Normally in the marine acquisition we see swell noise, some like if you have a repeating sorts, those kind of information. Then you have your source wavelet and the initial velocity model, and then you need to select some of the frequency. Maybe I think I have 1 or 2 slides to explain that workflow better. And then you get your synthetic, compare it, and then run through inversion. And it is again iterative. Iterative in that sense, how much data you want to use and how much frequency. The other workflow was basically you are repeating from the layer-wise approach, using only the reflection information, only travel time. Here you are using amplitude, phase, everything. So that's why full waveform inversion require very broadband signal, at least the lower frequency range. See, this is the octave panel again. You can see some information 2 to 4 Hz. So this is we call refracted event. Normally in like processing sequence, we remove those information because we want to retain only primary. But for the refraction, we will use those information, both the reflection as well as refraction, to get our velocity. That's why it require it's getting giving us a velocity which is like in the shallower section. You can see, you probably see some example. I don't know I have anything here or not, but it can improve because we are using so many information. But one of the biggest challenges FWI is still you require a good velocity model. So now we can like argue which one should, like how good it should velocity should be. Like again, we may require similar kind of reflection tomography initially to run to get that, so that our model is very close to at least within the global minimum rather than some local minima. So this is the example of basin of attraction. So region around global minimum where objective function is quasi-convex. So why we require lower frequency? Because if you have a low frequency, this basin of attraction will increase. That means your model is still within the global minimum basin of attraction, and you quickly able to converge the model. So that's why we require lower frequency. So for that, presently lot of broadband acquisition is available where you can record that lower end of this frequency, and it could help to quickly able to improve the initial model and coming within the global basin of attraction. And basically the full waveform inversion criteria is depends upon difference between your model and model sorts versus your real sorts. It should be half cycle away from its original thing. So this will explain better. So to model to perform properly or the full waveform inversion properly, suppose this is my prepared sort and this is my half cycle, and if this is my model sort, if the difference between this and this is within half cycle, then full waveform inversion can able to update. That's why initial model is required to be very good. But if the prepared sort and model sort is more than one cycle, full waveform inversion algorithm will think it will already reached in its proper convergence. It does not update the velocity model at all. So this is one of the quality control people normally does when they start full waveform inversion, which is called cycle skipping QC. You have already heard in sonic log acquisition, there is a cycle skipping, similar kind of things like you skip cycles. So people can generate maps depending on offset. So this is some example of a cycle skipping QC maps from the near offset to the far offset. And when you have a red color, which indicates you are within that half cycle range, or when it's starting going to green to more pink, probably they are not. So you can initial stage, you can restrict your data in offset as well as frequency wise, so that you can fit the criteria to run your algorithm. So probably inversion scheme, same thing is showing here. I'll not go through it. It's like same example. So you need wavelet, your initial model, then you get your forward modeling and your model data. So this is a schematic. Like you have your wavelet, you get your velocity, and then it will run through like how the acquisition happened. It's exactly same. It will go reflected back, coming back, and generate a synthetic source. And then we have our observed data. So here you can see that comparison. So if you see left to right, you can see it will flip through model sort versus input sorts. So you can see left hand side and going back further. So probably when you reach to the farthest offset, If I compare, this is my so you can see time wise this event is aligned with, but if I compare between this and this, they may be time wise slightly away, but amplitude wise not. So this kind of information full waveform inversion try to resolve so that you can see this will match with your synthetic as model sort will match with your input sorts really well. So similar way we have done residual move out. Here also we calculate the residual, simple subtraction. Then you basically reverse modeling. This concept was came from like reverse time migration. Basically you back propagate in time, like from where that residual has come from, and then try to correlate with your forward modeling, like at which location and where that differences come from, and correct that velocity. And then you get your updated velocity here. So tomography concept was similar, but information algorithm completely different. If you have a want to stop or the forward modeling is matching well, if it is yes, then you finish your forward model, get your model data as well as your corrected velocity. So full waveform summary is basically it can give us a more high resolution velocity model, which normally conventional tomography cannot. We already discussed several of those points. Two of the major QC, I show you short modeling as is cycle skipping. We normally do through it several times each of this phase, but frequency content is also another important as well as the offset, because those information is if you have a larger offset and lower frequency, it will help to get the building of FWA model easy, and you can really able to see that it can improve compared to the conventional tomography as well. So 2018 I have given a create a poster and shared with one of the, I think, under the final year student. So probably I have that FWA poster still available, so I can able to share that with you later on as well. With that, I conclude my talk and happy for any question. I know it's too much things I covered, but it's a vast topic. I try to give an overview how much I can. Thank you.